Iran isn't just another country on the map. It's something far older, far more stubborn, and far more mysterious than most people realize. For over 5,000 years, empires have risen with the belief that they would reshape this land forever, and almost every single one of them failed. From the Greeks to the Mongols to modern superpowers, wave after wave of conquerors tried to dominate Iran, erase its identity, and replace it with something new. And yet, somehow, Iran kept coming back, stronger, different, but never truly gone. Its language survived, its culture adapted, its identity refused to break. Historians still argue about this. How does a civilization endure when everything around it collapses? Because Iran didn't just survive history, it outlasted it. And what makes this story even more fascinating is that Iran's strength didn't come from constant victory, but from something much deeper, something that allowed it to absorb invasions instead of being destroyed by them. But to understand how that became possible, you have to go back to a time before Iran even had a name, when the first foundations of this unbreakable identity were quietly forming.
Long before the word Iran existed, the land was already alive with advanced societies that most people today barely recognize. One of the earliest was Elam, a powerful civilization that emerged around 3000 BC in what is now southwestern Iran. Unlike many empires that were built by sudden conquest, Elam grew slowly, almost quietly, as local communities organized themselves into structured cities and kingdoms. Over centuries, they developed their own writing systems, constructed massive temples, and built a culture that could stand alongside giants like Mesopotamia. They traded, they fought, and they competed with powerful neighbors like the Sumerians and Babylonians. And for nearly 2,000 years, Elam remained a major force in the ancient world, a rare example of long-term stability in a chaotic era. But that stability didn't last forever. Repeated invasions, especially from the Assyrians, slowly weakened Elam until its final collapse after the sack of Susa around 646 BC. It was a brutal end to a civilization that had once dominated the region. Yet, strangely, its disappearance didn't erase its influence. Instead, it left behind a foundation, one that would soon be inherited by a new wave of people who would take the region to an entirely different level. And that's where everything began to change.
As Indo-Iranian tribes migrated into the plateau, new identities began to form, but none would matter more than the Persians. And at the center of their rise was one man, Cyrus the Great. In 550 BC, Cyrus did something that reshaped history. He defeated the Median Empire and united the Iranian tribes under a single rule. But what made him truly different wasn't just his military success, it was how he used power. Within a few decades, he conquered Lydia, captured Babylon, and extended his influence deep into Central Asia. Yet instead of ruling through fear like many conquerors before him, Cyrus introduced something unexpected: tolerance. When he entered Babylon, he didn't destroy it, he restored it. He allowed exiled populations to return home and rebuild their temples, including the Jews. This approach was recorded on the Cyrus Cylinder, a document that some consider one of the earliest expressions of human rights. Whether that claim is fully accurate or not, one thing is clear. Cyrus understood that controlling people wasn't just about force, it was about legitimacy. And that idea changed everything. Because what he built wasn't just an empire, it was a system that could actually hold together vast, diverse populations. But that kind of power didn't go unnoticed, and it wouldn't go unchallenged for long.
Under Cyrus and his successors, especially Darius I, the Persian Empire became something the world had never seen before. At its peak, it stretched across 3 continents, covering around 5.5 million square kilometers. But what truly made it remarkable wasn't just its size, it was how it functioned. The Persians created advanced administrative systems, divided their lands into provinces, built massive road networks like the Royal Road, and established efficient taxation systems. Their capital, Persepolis, became a symbol of global power, where representatives from across the known world came to offer tribute. For nearly 2 centuries, this empire stood at the center of civilization. But with that level of dominance came a dangerous reality. It became a target. In 330 BC, Alexander the Great launched a campaign that would change everything. In just 8 years, the empire that took generations to build collapsed. Persepolis was burned, not just as a military act, but as a symbolic destruction of Persian power. It seemed like the story of Persia had come to an end. But what Alexander didn't realize was that conquering Iran was one thing, controlling it was something else entirely. After Alexander's death, his empire fractured, and Persia fell under the control of the Seleucid Empire. Greek culture spread, cities were built, and for a moment it looked like the region might fully transform. But beneath the surface, something remained unchanged. Persian identity didn't disappear, it adapted. And that quiet resistance eventually gave rise to a new power, the Parthians. Originally a nomadic group, they built an empire that stretched across Iran and became Rome's most persistent eastern rival. Unlike the centralized systems before them, the Parthians ruled in a decentralized way, allowing local leaders to maintain authority. This made their empire flexible and incredibly difficult to control. They dominated key trade routes, including parts of the Silk Road, turning Iran into a critical link between East and West. For centuries, they held off Roman expansion, proving that even the most powerful empire in the West couldn't fully break through. But while the Parthians were strong, they weren't unchallenged, and eventually a new force emerged from within, one that would try to restore total control over the region. In 224 AD, the Sasanian Empire rose to power, bringing a new level of centralization and control. Unlike the Parthians, the Sasanians built a strong, unified state and established Zoroastrianism as the official religion. Persian culture, art, and architecture flourished, and for a time it seemed like Iran had fully regained its dominance. But this power came at a cost. For over 400 years, the Sasanians were locked in constant conflict with the Roman and later Byzantine empires. These wars drained resources, weakened the economy, and exhausted the population. By the early 7th century, both sides were pushed to their limits, and that's when something unexpected happened. A new force emerged from Arabia, one that neither empire had fully anticipated. In a series of decisive battles, the Sasanian army was defeated, and by 651 AD, the empire had completely collapsed. It was one of the most dramatic power shifts in history. But once again, the fall of a political system didn't mean the end of Iranian identity, because what happened next would prove that Iran could be conquered, but not erased. With the arrival of Islam, Iran underwent one of the most significant transformations in its history. The religious landscape changed, and the region became part of a rapidly expanding Islamic world. But something remarkable happened during this period. Instead of losing its identity, Iran reshaped the system from within. The Persian language re-emerged in a new form, written in Arabic script, and quickly became a major cultural force. Iranian scholars, poets, and scientists played a central role in what is now known as the Islamic Golden Age. Even when Turkic dynasties like the Seljuks took control, they adopted Persian administration, language, and culture. Then came one of the most devastating invasions in history, the Mongols. Cities were destroyed, populations were wiped out, and it seemed like nothing could survive that level of destruction. But, once again, the pattern repeated. The Mongols didn't erase Iran. They were absorbed by it. They converted, adopted Persian traditions, and continued its cultural legacy. At this point, it was becoming clear, Iran didn't just survive invasions, it transformed its invaders. But the next shift wouldn't come from outside, it would come from within, and it would redefine Iran forever.
In 1501, a young leader named Ismail I made a decision that would permanently reshape Iran's identity. He established the Safavid Empire and declared Twelver Shia Islam as the official religion. This wasn't just a political move, it was a defining moment that separated Iran from its largely Sunni neighbors, especially the Ottoman Empire. For the first time, Iran had a clear religious identity tied directly to its state power. And yet, even with this transformation, its Persian cultural roots remained strong. This combination, Persian heritage and Shia identity, became the foundation of modern Iran. Under rulers like Shah Abbas I, the country experienced a cultural and economic revival. Cities like Isfahan became global centers of art, architecture, and trade. It was a golden age that re-established Iran as a major power. But while this identity made Iran stronger internally, it also created new external tensions. Because now, the threats weren't just invasions, they were political influence, foreign pressure, and something far more subtle, control without occupation.
By the 19th and early 20th centuries, Iran found itself caught in a different kind of conflict. Instead of direct conquest, powerful empires like Russia and Britain began competing for influence. Iran was never officially colonized, but in many ways it was controlled from the outside. The discovery of oil only made things worse, turning the country into a strategic prize. Public frustration grew, leading to the Constitutional Revolution of 1906, where people demanded limits on royal power. But those hopes were crushed, partly due to foreign interference. Then came one of the most controversial moments in modern history, the 1953 coup. When Prime Minister Mossadegh nationalized Iran's oil, it threatened Western interests. In response, British intelligence and the CIA helped orchestrate his removal. The Shah returned to power stronger than ever, backed by the United States. What followed was rapid modernization, but also growing inequality, repression, and the rise of a powerful secret police. On the surface, Iran looked modern and stable, but underneath, pressure was building, and it was about to explode.
By the late 1970s, dissatisfaction had reached a breaking point. Ayatollah Khomeini, a religious leader in exile, became the voice of opposition. His messages spread across the country, fueling a movement that quickly grew out of control. In 1979, millions took to the streets, and the Shah was forced to flee. The monarchy collapsed, replaced by the Islamic Republic. It was a dramatic shift, not just for Iran, but for global politics. Relations with the United States collapsed, especially after the hostage crisis, and tensions have remained ever since. Soon after, Iran was pulled into a devastating war with Iraq that lasted 8 years, causing massive loss and destruction. In the decades that followed, Iran continued to face sanctions, political isolation, and ongoing conflict with global powers. Issues like the nuclear program only added to the tension, especially after major agreements broke down. And yet, despite all of this pressure, one thing hasn't changed. Iran is still standing, still resisting, still holding on to an identity that has survived for thousands of years. Which raises a final question. After everything it has endured, is Iran defined by its past, or is it still shaping the future?